So today, we're going to unpack one of the most fascinating and honestly controversial stories in modern anthropology. It's the story of the Pirahã people. Are they really a tribe with no concept of God, or is there a whole lot more going on here?
I mean, just think about that for a second. What if there was a group of people completely cut off from the rest of the world who just never developed religion? For a lot of people, that sounds like the perfect test case for what humans are really like deep down. And yeah, this idea has really taken off. You'll hear it from figures like the atheist activist Matt Dillahunty. The Pirahã get held up as this prime example of a naturally godless society. But, as we're about to see, the real story might not be so simple.
So where did this whole narrative even begin? Let's trace this godless tribe myth right back to its source.
All right, first things first, who are the Pirahã? Well, they're a very small indigenous group, only about 300 people or so, living deep in the Amazon rainforest. They're hunter-gatherers, and get this, their language is what's called a language isolate. That means it's not related to any other known language on Earth. Oh, and they call themselves the straight ones, while the rest of us, we're the crooked heads. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Pretty much everything we've heard about the Pirahã being godless comes from just one guy, a linguist named Dan Everett. He first went to the Amazon way back in 1977 as a Christian missionary. His goal was to learn their language and convert them. But in this wild twist, after spending years with them, he was the one who changed. He lost his faith and became an atheist. So Everett's whole theory, everything he claims about the Pirahã, really boils down to this one big idea he came up with.
He called it the immediacy of experience principle. And it's actually pretty simple when you break it down. He said the Pirahã only talk about, believe in, or even care about things they can personally see, hear, or touch right now, or things that someone they know and trust has personally witnessed. If it's not part of their direct, immediate experience, it basically doesn't exist for them. He called them the ultimate empiricists.
And this one principle, he claimed, was the key to understanding all these shocking things the Pirahã supposedly lack. No creation myths, no numbers or counting, not even a real past tense in their language, no words for colors, no memory of anything that happened more than a couple generations ago. It's a really radical picture of a people totally locked into the here and now. But this is where the story starts to get a lot more complicated.
Okay, so let's look at the first big crack in this seamless narrative, their belief in spirits. This is the obvious question, isn't it? If they only believe what they can see and touch, how on earth do you explain a belief in invisible spirits of the jungle? That seems like a massive contradiction to the whole immediacy of experience thing.
Well, Everett had a pretty clever explanation for this. He argued that the Pirahã don't just believe in spirits like it's some kind of superstition. No, they claim they actually see and hear them. He talks about these moments where the whole village would point at the same spot on the riverbank, all shouting that they could see a spirit. So, in his framing, the spirits are an immediate empirical experience for them.
But you see the problem here, right? Everett, our main observer, he couldn't see or hear the spirits. So he's basically using a piece of data that isn't empirical to him to support his theory that they're a totally empirical people. It's kind of a logical loop, and it's where other researchers really started to raise their eyebrows.
And that little inconsistency kind of opens the door for a whole different side of the story. Because, Everett wasn't the only person to ever live with and study the Pirahã. So let's bring in another key player, a Brazilian anthropologist named Marco Antonio Gonçalves. He also spent a ton of time with the Pirahã, learned their language, and, well, the picture he paints of their worldview is profoundly different.
So, remember how Everett said they have no myths? Well, check this out. Gonçalves wrote down this incredibly detailed recreation story. It's about a man shooting the moon with an arrow, making it die. Then the whole world goes dark, and a creator figure named Igai has to remake everything. The animals, a new moon, even the fish. This does not sound like a people with zero interest in where things came from.
And it wasn't just that one story. Gonçalves also found that they have this incredibly complex view of the universe, with at least 5 different layers. They live on the first layer. Above them are layers with deformed beings. And this is a big one, a layer for the spirits of the dead, an afterlife. This kind of complex cosmology just doesn't line up with a simple here and now model at all. Okay,
So let's just pause for a second and try to make sense of these two completely conflicting stories. How do they stack up side by side?
Let's go back to Everett's own account for a minute. He himself said the reason his missionary work completely failed was because the Pirahã asked him a simple question about Jesus. Why are you telling us about this guy if you never saw him? They applied their strict standard of evidence, and his stories didn't make the cut.
Now, here is the massive inconsistency. When confronted with the myths that Gonsalves found, Everett's explanation was that the Pirahã must have just borrowed them from other tribes or missionaries. But hold on, if they're so strict about first-hand accounts that they rejected his story about Jesus, why on earth would they accept anyone else's second-hand myths? It seems like his own logic completely undermines his excuse here.
So when you put it all side by side, it's like we're looking at two totally different tribes. You have Everett's version, the ultimate empiricists, with no myths, no past, no religion. And then you have Gonsalves's version, a people with a layered cosmos, detailed myths, and a belief in an afterlife. The contrast is just stark.
So that really makes you wonder, right? If the evidence against this godless tribe idea is so strong, why has the myth become so popular? Why does it stick around?
Well, if you look at what other experts in linguistics and anthropology say, a few big problems pop up. They point to the inconsistencies we just talked about. Other linguists, including giants like Noam Chomsky, have argued that his data is either flat-out misanalyzed or just not as unique as he claims. And then there's the more pointed criticism, that Everett's work isn't really a scientific account of the Pirahã, but more of a personal story about his own conversion away from faith, which he then projected onto the people he was studying.
So what's the big lesson here? For me, the whole Pirahã saga is this incredible cautionary tale. It shows how one really powerful, captivating story can completely overshadow a much more complex reality. It's a reminder to always look for the other side of the story, and to be a little skeptical of narratives that seem just a bit too neat, especially if they perfectly confirm something we already wanted to believe.
And that leaves us with one last question to chew on. Why were so many of us so quick, so eager, to believe in a godless tribe? What does our fascination with that idea really say? Does it tell us more about the Pirahã, or does it tell us more about ourselves?